Part 1: Essential Foundations for Spiritual Problem Solving. There's nothing wrong with God's creation. Mystery and suffering only exist in the mind. Ramana Maharshi. Chapter 1: Spiritual Problem Solving. The solution to the problems of the day is the awakening of the consciousness of humanity to the divinity within. Hazrat Inayat Khan. Can you make a flower grow? Probably your first response is, such a simple thing to do. Plant a seed, some dirt, provide sunlight, and water. In time, a flower will emerge. The proof is that there are millions upon millions of flowers sprouting all over the world at this moment. That is certainly true. However, I am inviting you to reread the question and consider who or what generates the life that makes a flower grow. Because the who or what is the source of solutions to all our problems. Who or what causes the flower seed to blossom and the tiny embryo to become a human being? Who or what grows our fingernails and beats our hearts even as we sleep? Who or what is behind the movement of the winds which we feel but never see? What is this force that keeps the planets in place and hurls our world through the galaxy of a breathtaking speed? These questions have been asked for as long as humans have had the ability to contemplate their existence. Spirit is what I have chosen to call the formless, invisible energy, which is the source and sustenance of life on this planet. This force, no matter the name we give it, can solve every problem that we encounter. There is a spiritual solution to every problem. We only need to learn how to access it. In this book, I will explain ways that I have found to access this force. I will begin by explaining the 3 basic steps to finding your spiritual solutions to problems. I first read about these steps when I immerse myself in How to Know God, the Yoga Aphorisms of Patanjali, written sometime between the 4th century BC and the 4th century AD. That's a pretty big period. These spiritual disciplines and techniques were written to enable a person to achieve the ultimate intuitive knowledge of God. Unitive oneness, knowledge of God. I will refer to this powerful collection of writings frequently and share with you how this knowledge can be applied to your life. I trust you will discover for yourself that these things you have come to label as problems have a ready solution available to you right now, in this moment, in the world we were calling spirit. The first of 3 steps for accessing spiritual direction. Recognition. It may appear obvious that one must first recognize something before applying it, but this is actually the most troublesome step in moving towards spiritual illumination. Recognizing the availability of an invisible force that can be put to use in solving a problem requires overcoming a great deal of our early training and conditioning. Have you ever thought about the limitations we experience when we identify ourselves as only a physical body in a material existence? For instance, do you believe there is only one kind of power or knowledge, which relies on your sensory or intellectual faculties to solve problems? Most of us have been taught that this is true, and that all of the information that has been acquired in the total inventory of options available to us, this is a conditioned attitude of non-recognition of our divine connection to spiritual problem solving. In this state of non-recognition, we believe that medicines, herbs, surgery, and doctors are responsible for all healing. or that improving one's financial picture involves the exclusive application of working hard, studying, interviewing, and sending our resumes. In essence, non-recognition leads us to believe that our knowledge is limited to those kinds of phenomena, which are explained through our sensory functions. Patanjali described a kind of knowledge or power that is not accessed solely through the material or sensory world. Recognition that this power exists and is always available is the first step in activating it. However, it is not accessed solely through the teachings of others or through ancient writings, just as we do not dream because someone teaches us or writes about dreaming. Recognizing, like dreaming, is something we access by making an inner and outer commitment to our ability to recognize. For example, in this first step, when you are faced with a problem, I suggest you create a personal affirmation such as, I may not know exactly how to access a spiritual solution here, but I fully recognize that a spiritual solution exists. By recognition of its existence, we invite the power of the known to be known by us. As physical beings, we can make a flower grow in the sense of the response to the question in the opening sentence of this book. But if we are thoughtful, we realize that we cannot even begin to unravel the mystery of the invisible force that initiates life. Yet it is in the omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, spiritual world that we find solutions to our problems. This spiritual force is everywhere and in everything and everyone. When we incorporate the first step, recognition, we begin the process of accessing this all-knowing power. The second of 3 steps for accessing spiritual direction. Realization. We discover that knowledge achieved by realization of a much higher order than intellectual reasoning. This is not an exercise in intellectual reasoning. In this step, we go beyond recognition of a spiritual presence into the phase of realization, where nothing but our own personal experience is trusted. We become an explorer in virgin territory where no one but ourselves can be. Here, only you can validate your experience. Our desire to realize the presence is an integral part of the unexplainable dynamic that creates life. When we actively meditate on a chosen spiritual ideal, or even a given personality, we are expressing our desire by inviting the presence to be accessible. I suggest that you begin this process of realization by visualizing the presence you seek. Create an inner picture of yourself, receiving divine guidance, and banish all doubts about its validity. Realize that there is no need to explain or defend as you go within yourself. In silent desire to realize your spirit, know that your invitation will be accepted. You will find that your picture dissolves into the reality of presence that is accessible within yourself. This is realization. It is a personal experience beyond anything related to an intellectual exercise. With practice and desire, in quiet meditation, you will experience this presence. There are times the intellect will persist, trying to make your experience fit the reality of the material world. One way to think about this process of moving forward toward realization is to envision a magnet. See yourself as the magnet, which is attracting to you all that you have recognized and acknowledged as true. Then gradually become aware of a greater magnetic force. which pulls you toward higher truths. The effort is not exclusively your own any longer. You are in kind of a metaphysical magnetic field which draws you in the direction of your realization. I've had this experience of realization in my own life for the past several years. When I enter into a state of deep meditation, I am abundantly aware of a magnetic-like force which pulls me in the direction of God. The revelation that I experience in those moments of God realization represents a renewal of my mind. I reconnect to a kind of energy that propels me in the direction of a solution to anything that might be troublesome. For example, something as mundane as purchasing a piece of property for my wife and myself to move to when our children leave the nest was causing me a great deal of inner turmoil. I reminded myself to move into that invisible magnetic-like field of energy, and I was guided toward a solution. At precisely the right moment, a friend called and said one sentence that put me at ease about the dilemma. Done. This is what I call a realization in action. We can all use this realization of the availability of spirit in the resolution of problems. As you learn to employ the first step, recognition of spiritual solutions, you will move to a state of realization in which you experience the power. You will realize that every kind of disharmony, discord, or dis-ease is amenable to the spiritual energy that is in you. The third of the steps for accessing spiritual direction, reverence. Communing quietly with the spiritual force is our way of becoming one with it. This third step, reverence, is acquired quickly by some people, while for others it can take a long time to achieve. Communing quietly with the spiritual force and becoming one with it means there is no sense of separation. We know our divinity and commune with that part of ourselves. In other words, we see ourselves as a part of God. We are in a state of reverence for all that we are. There is no doubt of our divinity. In this state, we fully experience this quote from the Bible. On that day, you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. John 14:20. Quietly communing with God when we are searching for guidance is a way of temporarily turning off our ego mind. Instead of our ego mind thinking, I can fix this, we are willing to immerse it into our higher self. Like a drop of water separated from its source, the little mind is unable to create and sustain life. When the drop of water rejoins the ocean, it has all the powers of its source. The drop of water separate from its source symbolizes our ego self when we are separated from our source of omnipotent power. Communing quietly allows the direct experience of knowing a spiritual solution to every problem. With our divine connection, we are always in touch with the solution. Problems persist when we fail to recognize, realize, and finally, quietly commune with our own source, power, spirit, God. I often think of Abraham Lincoln watching his beloved Union crumbling under the energy of hatred that engulfed this country. He wrote, I have been driven many times to my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go. To my knees is a way of saying I surrendered to my source and turned this huge problem over that same power that moves the stars. You can do the same thing in times of strife. Let go and let God, as they say in the 12 circle group. When you practice communing quietly with spirit, you will sense the presence of a sacred partner. You can turn your problem over to this senior partner and move to a place of peace. The Indian saint Sri Ramchandra used the following parable to teach his devotees how to reach the state of direct union with God. A disciple once came to a teacher to learn to meditate on God. The teacher gave him instructions, but the disciple soon returned and said that he could not carry them out. Every time he tried to meditate, he found himself thinking about his pet buffalo. Well then, said the teacher, you meditate on that buffalo you are so fond of. This disciple shut himself up in a room and began to concentrate on the buffalo. After some days, the teacher knocked at his door, and the disciple answered, Sir, I am sorry, I cannot come out to greet you. This door is too small. My horns will be in the way. Then the teacher smiled and said, Splendid! You have become identified with the object of your concentration. Now fix the concentration upon God, and you will easily succeed. The message is so clear. Become one with Spirit, and do not doubt or fear your divinity. Move beyond your ego mind into your higher self. There is a spiritual solution to every problem. The 3 basic steps to access your connection to spiritual solutions to problems in your life are recognition, realization, and reverence. The balance of the first chapter discusses my meaning of the key words of the title of this book. I believe the definitions I used for spiritual, problem, and solution can form the basis for a unique way to bringing peace and fulfillment into your daily life. It is further my contention that once you internalize these 3 concepts, you will rarely revert to the belief that you face insurmountable problems. Eventually, you will learn that all those so-called problems are dissolvable by saturating them with a higher energy of spirit. What I mean by spiritual. It is written in the Bhagavad Gita, that's the ancient Eastern holy book, often associated with India. We are born into a world of nature. Our second birth is into a world of spirit. This world of spirit is often depicted as separate or distinct from our physical world. I think it is important to see spiritual as a part of physical rather than to separate these 2 dimensions of our reality. It is all one. Spirit represents that which we cannot validate with our senses, like the wind that we feel but cannot see. 2 great saints from different corners of the world, as well as different religious persuasions, have described spirit this way. Spirit is the life of God within us, St. Teresa of Avila, and whatever draws the mind outward is unspiritual, and whatever draws the mind inward is spiritual. Ramana Maharshi. The key to understanding spirituality is this idea of our inner world and our outer world. One world, yet 2 unique aspects of being human. I have a friend who compares the physical to a light bulb and the spiritual to electricity. He insists that electricity has been around as long as spirituality, but we did not make a religion of it when it was discovered. Likewise, when I refer to spiritual, I do not intend it to be synonymous with religious. Religion is orthodoxy, rules, and historical scriptures maintained by people over long periods of time. Generally, people are born into religions and raised to obey the customs and practices of that religion without question. These are customs and expectations from outside of the person, and do not fit my definition of spiritual. I prefer definition of spirituality as described in St. Teresa's and Maharishi's observation. Spirituality is from within. The result of recognition, realization, and reverence, my personal understanding of spiritual practice, is that it is a way of making my life work at a higher level and of receiving guidance for handling problems. The ways in which I personally do this involve a few simple but basic practices. I have enumerated them here in my own order of significance.